The Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Dr. Chikwe Ihekwazu, has said the coronavirus disease testing approach being used by Ghana would not be replicated for Nigeria. Dr. Chikwe had said in, and I quote, "Some managed acceleration is exactly what we're doing with a deliberate strategy on how to scale." Ghana has a different approach to testing, and I know exactly what they're doing. I respect what they're doing, but we don't want to go down that path because it has its limitations. I want to assure everyone that we have learned a lot of lessons from this. And one of the biggest ones is that you have to build up your laboratory capacity, end quote. Well, for more on this, to clarify these issues, I have a virologist, Professor Tomori Oyewale, joining me right now on the news. Thanks so much for joining us. I will come to that issue of comparing what Ghana is doing with Nigeria, where the CDC DG Ihekwazu says we're not going to go that way because it has its limitations. Help us understand this better.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to come in. I actually made a contact with Dr. Ampofo, who is in charge of the Ghana system. We talked about 20 minutes ago, and I then asked him what exactly they were doing. Actually, what they are doing is they look at, you get a pool of test samples, maybe pull them in groups of 5 or 10, test those ones first. If anyone is positive, I mean, if the pool shows positive, then they go back to the pool and find out which individual is positive. But if the 5 is negative, then they don't have to test all of the 5. That's what they're doing. So they pull these samples together in groups of 5 or 10. And when they test that pool, any positive, they then go back to go and find out exactly which one is responding for the positive. That can be done in a place where it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. We are dealing with too many samples. Of course, yes, that you can do that. But then anytime you bring and pull samples together, you create other problems. And therefore, I agree very much with Chikwe that we shouldn't go in that direction. I think what we need to do is have enough laboratories to test each sample individually so that we can be sure what we're getting. Over.
And so far, Nigeria has just about 12 functional COVID-19 testing labs in Nigeria, and we wonder whether this even scratches the surface. But you did say that Nigeria missed the opportunity in terms of preparation for COVID-19 before it came to our shores. Now, what exactly could we have done better moving forward from now, considering the fact that the numbers, they're now in dozens, in tens. I mean, 108 just in the last 24 hours, and who knows what figures we'll be recording by tomorrow. What should we be doing differently going forward?
Well, what we should have done, just like the question you asked, what we should have done was not to focus only on isolation wards. Every aspect of this, the laboratory, the communications should have been done at the beginning when we're running around building isolation wards. We should also have thought about labs. We should have thought about even the issue of communications. We should have had thoughts long time ago about, are we ever going to go to lockdown? If we do, what else do we need to do? So it is called preparation. What we're doing right now in Nigeria, like I said, was like making ammunition at the war front in every aspect. We don't look at things, holistically. We were focusing on having patients, and therefore we're building isolation wards. But we forgot about the testing of labs. We forgot about even the issue of communication to people. Those are the things we should have done at the beginning to ensure that all of the aspects of this control will have been in place, not one running after the other, after we're discovering, oh, we should have done this, oh, we shouldn't have done that. Over.
And from all indication, many of the isolation centers are not, they're not permanent structures that you would think that post-COVID-19, those structures would still be there in the event that another outbreak happens, though we're not praying for that. Now, the Ekiti State Governor, Kayode Fayemi, did say that there's a need for us to actually decentralize, the pandemic battle. Would you be on the same page with him?
Well, I don't know exactly what he means by decentralization. But if it means that the whole thing should not be controlled from the presidential task force, I agree with him. I mean, Lagos State actually is even ahead of the federal government. States should also have followed in the line of what Lagos State is doing. I think it is important to prepare. Each sector, each state should have been prepared. What federal government was doing, each state should have done it at the time this whole thing started. We didn't have to wait until the disease comes to our place before we start taking action. So I agree with him in decentralization, but again, all those should have done before we got to this stage.
And exactly what I really need to know is what should we now begin to do? It's almost 1,000 cases officially in Nigeria. And when you factor in the fact that we're not following the RDT testing methodology, but the PCR, which seems to be a bit slow, less than 10,000 tested so far. What exactly should we be doing, not just in terms of the medical interventions that Nigeria needs seriously? There's the other issue of palliatives, which is a troubling situation for a lot of Nigerians who say they're being left out.
You're quite right. Two things you've mentioned. You talked about the issue of the lab test. Nigeria should, at this point, that's one of the areas we also forgot in our preparation. We're forgetting about research. We're talking about operational research. We're forgetting about making use of the talents we have at home. The Medical Laboratory Science Council, the NAFDAC, are the ones who determine what kind of things we use in this country. Long at the beginning, they should have been involved on all the different kind of RDTs that are coming in. We should have done that test ourselves, not wait for WHO to test for us before we accept. We have the talent, we have the people who can do that. And now on the issue of palliative, I think planning was probably one of the problems. We probably didn't realize the magnitude of the problem that we're creating for ourselves by locking down. But now we've had two sessions of lockdown. By now we should know how best to ensure that what the people need is passed on to them. Again, in doing that, we must do it in such a way that we don't break the rules. Like when you now call people to come for food and then everybody is congregating together. We must also bear in mind, like I said, the COVID thing, it's more of a personal issue. The government must do the lockdown, but the people also have something to do on their own side. They must, because it is you that COVID will kill, not the government. And therefore, you should take it very seriously. And all those things that will prevent you getting COVID, make sure you do it. Wash your hand, keep your distance. But people will ask, oh, we live in environments where people are all together and that kind of situation. We should begin to think of the future. Do we want this type of housing in the future? It's a lesson that we need to learn. And like I said, I hope it will not be another lesson forgotten, but one lesson learned to make our life better. Nigeria was equally as good in those days. So I don't see reason why we cannot go back to some of those good things we were doing in those days.
Exactly. And maybe one of the reasons why we have the situation where about 40 health workers have been infected so far with COVID-19, and that's not including the over 100 or so that have already died from Lassa fever, which goes to show the level of exposure of our health workers. What do we need to do in that regard? Because there seems to be a gaping gouge, in terms of making sure that things that need to be in place are there, personal protective equipment and what have you for our health workers.
When you have an insufficiency of something, you have to prioritize the use. And by that I mean, we don't have enough of protective equipment, we don't have all those type of things. But then who are the most vulnerable apart from the sick person? It will be the health worker. They get priority of getting those things because if they fall sick and they die, then it means that's a major problem for us. We want people to take care of them. And therefore it is important, to prioritize what we need. Give it to those who are at the forefront of the battle. Make sure that they are each and everyone protected. But at the same time, also, I think our health workers must also be told that, they have their life to protect. I mean, there are certain things that they can do, which, if they follow up on certain things, insist on certain things. You don't just go into a battlefront unprepared. And that's what some of the things. So while the government will provide for them, they too on no account should they go into doing things that will be of a danger to their own life.
What do you foresee then for Nigeria if we continue along this trajectory where we're, recording so many cases on a daily basis. Of course, if you place it side by side with what's happened in Europe and in the US, you might want to say that, well, it's not that bad. But from all indication, from what we're hearing about Kano, mysterious deaths and, latest stories coming from Ibadan, we might have a time bomb that would tick anytime soon. What are your projections, and what should we do to prevent, a situation getting totally out of hand?
Thank you very much. I think we have a major problem in our hands. And the more we test, the more we know the magnitude of the problem that we have. We should continue testing to be able to really demarcate exactly what's the magnitude of the problem. I can predict that we're going to have more cases. More of the states will be states that are not testing before. We'll now be going to find, once we spread out our labs into all the states, we'll begin to find more cases. I see us, when we're going to reach the peak, people talk about flattening the curve. We're not flattening the curve yet. The curve is still rising. And what do we need to flatten the curve? There's things that it goes down to the individual basis. That first and foremost, I protect myself. The next person protects himself. And that's the way we can bring that the whole thing down. And that's what the lockdown is supposed to achieve. But lockdown is not achieving that, because we are not playing our role as individuals in the lockdown things. About people are still moving around, they're still doing what they should do. I mean, take some really interesting. Sometimes people will sit down at a meeting, sitting straight by seat, but when they are going out, they go and take group photograph. Simple little things like that are not what we should take care of. We must be on the alert 100% of the time that this virus can be anywhere, any place. And that's why I think moving forward. Now, I think we need to reach a stage in this country now where everybody should be put on their face mask when they go out to the public. Over.
Everybody should put on their face mask. But let's talk about that palliative issue before I let you go. We touched on it very briefly. Now, there's a balancing act that needs to be done, protecting lives and preserving livelihoods. It is a tough one, isn't it? How do we do that? How do we achieve that?
It is. I think it is. There's no doubt that we have to balance the two. As we are protecting the people's life from one disease, we must also preserve their integrity in terms of their livelihood. Which means the government must find a better way of reaching the people who are most affected by this problem. But it's also the issue of the fact that we are naturally a welfare people. We take care of our families. Those who are rich, who are in a position to be better off than the others, we should extend this welfare. We have a government that doesn't have welfare system like in other parts of the world, where the government can drop things in your house, other things for you. We don't have that yet. So we have to do that for ourselves. So we have to appeal to the individuals. Apart from the official one that the Coalition Against COVID is doing, there's also a role for those who are in positions of not authority, of privilege, to spread out their hands to other less privileged people around them. Because if you protect them, you protect yourself also.
Now, that's a message that really needs to get to the very, very root of the nation. Thank you so much, Professor Tomori Oyewale, for joining me on the news at this time. Former President, Nigerian Academy of Science. Thank you so much.